1 second. So here we are, here we go. So, hi everyone. I'm Bernd and I'm working here at company REINARTZ, and I'm really happy speaking about dry processing of insects. So working here at company REINARTZ means that I am employed here in the technical sales department since already 3 years, and I am in that lucky position to live, yeah, I can say so, to live in an insect bubble in all those 3 years already. And yeah, just my slide. If you want to contact me after the presentation separately, it's not a problem. We are company REINARTZ in means of that we were founded in 1852 already, and in 1912 we settled over in the Neuss Harbor area. You find that building here in the background again, and we started as a machinery and machine manufacturer and producer mainly for the oil industry, and we specialized quite early in cold pressing technologies in means of that we value the oil seeds to produce a highly rated cold pressed oil or a very protein rich press cake, which was used for feed in the former years. Actually, it is a completely different topic as well. And how did we make it into the insect industry? That happened to us. Mostly this happens by accident, that we were asked many years ago to make some test trials, test pressing with dried insects, and for sure that were dried BSF larvae, which we pressed first. And since those first days, we made a lot of trial pressing here with other insect species as well. So it is mealworms, let's say yellow and lesser mealworms. Even I think there's also a giant mealworm. I'm not sure if we already tested it, but we also pressed and tested crickets and some more exotic things like silkworm pupae, which was interesting to learn as well. From those first steps and days, we moved forward and we developed by growing from a single equipment manufacturer to a process solution manufacturer, and that we are offering complete process lines in the dry rendering or dry processing, as well that being involved in the insect scene, that we are also able to do those typical tasks in regard to networking, that we have a lot of experience in engineering complete BSF facilities. There we are very strong at the moment, and we see that the last purchase orders, they were real engineering tasks, which we are covering with our engineers as well. Yeah, let's jump into the topic of dry processing. Dry processing, yeah, we can have a look on a typical insect farm as an example. And we see that the processing, or some say post-processing, is only a small fraction of such a whole installation or typical industrial installation or industrial facility. We will see that we get some information about the sieving, which is one of the first processing after receiving the larvae from the rearing area. And then we go directly into the drying and the pressing, which means the separation from liquid and solid. Okay, sieving, everybody can imagine. We have the live larvae, and we have already the converted former substrate, which should be now something like a almost dry material, maybe a residual moisture of about 10%, something like that. And if we have done everything fine and nicely, we have a real spread between the big live larvae which are normally live and vitally, and we have the dead and fine coarse material of substrate, and this should be separated or fractionated in a simple sieving process. And simple means it can be simple vertical vibration sieves or screens. It can be a separation table. There are different technologies available. I just put in some manufacturers which came in mind first, but you know best from your area and where you are operating. There are so many sieving equipment manufacturers. So maybe you will share your experience with us, who is working good and who is doing fine. And you can imagine if you are a small scale producer of insects, then you can use simple technology. And the more you grow, the more your production capacities are growing, that you may look for much higher sophisticated sieving technologies, air sifters or combination of that, air and sieve, like Custos is doing. That would be a nice option to test them, but you already need some capacities. Dry processing, yeah. This is what we are doing from the beginning, coming from the cold pressing technology. It is just super simple that we have the live larvae, we have to deactivate them, we will dry the larvae, and after drying, we already have, let's say, a sellable product. It is a product. Full fat dried larvae is still a product which is traded in a lot of areas in the world. Or if you want to climb up the value chain, you can go to separate the dried larvae into an insect meal, protein-rich insect meal, and an insect oil, which is also a highly valued product meanwhile. If you start with a simple block diagram, we have to go into practice, and then you will see in the process flow diagram that we have the machinery shown, and we also put in the values, the capacities, and which are the consumables and what is needed. You will see that there's a dryer shown, that you will receive the dried larvae. The dried larvae of here, in that regard, it is BSF, which needs, it is a little bit uncomfortable. BSF larvae, they need some preconditioning before you go into our screw press. Other insects or other species like mealworms and crickets are not that tricky in pressing, at least. And after the pressing, we have the solid fraction. Maybe you need some kind of conveying and cooling. You have a milling to get a homogeneous, fine coursed meal, which can be handled into big bags, for example, and the oil coming out of the larvae will be first collected in a so-called crude oil tank, and then it will be purified, and there are as well different separate purification and filtration technologies available. You already see here that all equipment used here is already, how to say, typical technology in different industries like agriculture, like food and feed technology, and or producing industry. And this is no rocket science. Everything is quite simple. It is reliable equipment, and this is used in a typical dry process. We will jump over into detail. First, again, we have the already sieved larvae. They are separated from the frass. We have to deactivate them. There are other names like blanching people use, or the simple devitalization of the larvae. This has to be done in a very, how to say, we have to respect the animal welfare, that the killing happens immediately. And this is mostly done by boiling water, or if you go into a larger scaled production line, you will maybe use overheated water or steam. With the dryer, we have the first big point in the typical process, or the dry process, that drying technology seems to be very expensive, and we can say it is expensive in relation to something else. We have first seen that in a typical insect facility, the processing is quite small, but within the processing, already the drying takes maybe a half of the potential invest or possible invest you have to do. If you are still on a small scale, it is easy to find some typical air drying equipment like a drying chamber, oven, or pre-convectional drying. Like most simple thing will be solar drying, which is also a potential technology in some areas of the world. Other air drying equipment is a fluidized or fluid bed dryer or a drum dryer. In that regard, we have a fluidized bed of the larvae, in which they are either most common is the vibrating bottom of such a dryer, in which the frequency of the vibration brings the larvae in a certain flow, and by the free flowing air through the dryer, the evaporated water will be transported away. This process is quite good to maintain and to handle, so that you are able to run quite close to the needed temperature, that you see how much water is already evaporated. By permanent monitoring, you see when you can go out of with the larvae, with the product out of the dryer, and when you start the cooling down of your material also. Not that high sophisticated, maybe a little bit below, especially in regard to investment, is the contact drying with a disc dryer. In that, what is shown here in that picture. It can be also a batch cooker, which you can find it also in the rendering or fat industry. And by contacting the larvae with the hot surfaces, also the water inside the larvae is evaporated. Some technology also known in the food industry, or maybe also in the Asian areas, is, because of low electric costs, is the microwave drying. It is super simple in regard that you do not need those peripheral installations with air condensers and so on. That is just a quite long tunnel with a microwave. But a pain point is that most microwave users, they are very good in firefighting. In regard to metal impurities you have from time to time, you need some operators intervention in that regard. Anyhow, we look on the product of insects. We have seen that these insects going in there in a very bright way, and they will leave the microwave dryer also in a bright way. And we have spoken about potential investment costs. And this all leads us into some kind of an evaluation matrix. As said, drying equipment is quite expensive related to the total investment cost in processing. The dried larvae, already mentioned, that is also a product which can be sold, or you go into the processing. First, it is a preconditioning, and then we are already in the screw press. Here you see a big REINARTZ screw press in operation. These, when we talked about larvae drying, these are microwave dried larvae. It is a very, very bright cake which we receive. As well, the oil is very bright as well. You can find on YouTube a short video which is showing this big machine in operation. Here, for that speech, I let the video out. So, the insect meal. From the screw press, you will receive the insect meal in everything, like between powder and a very coarse material. This can be even small pellets. This means that we need another processing step behind if you tend to have a very homogeneous material at the end. And the oil, here you see an example for when BASF oil at room temperature, it is almost, or in most cases, it is a fat. And if we handle it with higher temperature, you will have it like an oil, which it looks like a window in the winter, when the first ice flowers start to grow, when it gets colder and colder. You see as well some impurification, and for that reason we also or already mentioned the filtration process at the end of the oil handling. Purification or filtration process is quite nice because you remove the impurifications or the solids from the oil, and then you have a nice oil which has also a very, very good shelf time, at least. Yeah. In the beginning of the process, or in the beginning of the processing, we have removed the insect frass, and now the question is what to do with the frass. There are different potential markets available or seen actually. It can be biogas, it can be the classic fertilizer, or you can go into organic agriculture if your whole insect process is also organic, for example. Other ideas are thermal heating for combusting, things like that. Everything is possible. We have to keep in mind that within the European Union that we have to sanitize or hygienize the process or the frass, and this is something around to hold above 70 degrees for 1 hour the temperature of the frass, that any microbiologic load may be reduced, so it can be brought out to the fields for if it shall be used as a fertilizer. We will see what happens, which other markets will come up. So also in regard to biogas, we should maybe take into account some local potential of building circular use, in means of we first have the biomass which is converted by the insects, and later on it is used in a biogas installation. Something like that is possible as well. Yeah, at the end, I'm quite good in time, so not too much talky. We have looked on the dry processing. It is something where you have to make your decision at a certain point. We have learned that dry processing is super simple, that we have also taken into account what is locally available and what is best suitable for your process, for your later products, and so on. And something which is still open, we have to look on the quality. So actually, we do not have any quality standards in insect products. I know, and we are part of a working group, that something will happen soon or later. But typical quality standards are also already in use, that you are asked in regard to digestibility or solubility of your later protein products. And we think that dry processing, or we are very convinced that dry processing is something to meet the highest quality standards by ease. Yeah, we see that the complete killed or deactivated larvae, that it is all the containing materials, the proteins, the oil, and so on, that they are well protected by the larvae or insect body in the drying process. This is so super simple, and this makes it so that the dried larvae are that high value product at the end. So yeah, what happens as well with the dry processing, we have also something that we still keep it super simple, that we are living the KISS principle. And as mentioned already, protein content, solubility, digestibility, these are those quality standards which become more and more valuable for your potential products. And what we see is that there will be a certain spread in super huge and super big installations. And I think it will go to countless small installations as well. And this is a trend, what we are already seeing actually. What can be also possible is that your total business case of running an insect facility can be split in more, successful business units in regard to that you give away the breeding, or you give away the rearing, or you just focus on the rearing and don't care about processing. Everything can be thought and should be analyzed in detail. What we also like to say that between being a small insect farmer and becoming an insect farmer in a certain big amount or industrial scale, yeah, what does it mean? What does scale, what does amount mean? We say that actually that maybe for BSF, something between 500 kilograms or 2 tons per day of fresh larvae. This is still something which can be named as a pilot plant. But it sounds much or it does not sound much. That depends on you. But we see that 2 tons or up to 2 tons of fresh larvae, that a lot of operations within that insect facility can be done by operators manually. That's a connection between separate or several separate process steps can be connected by manual operation, or maybe some adds and helping hands by a mechanical use or something like that. But this is still a more or less manual facility. And everything above that 2 tons, that is already something in which you should think about a higher grade of automation or something like that. But for the small ones, we will have those pilot. Oops. Okay. We have those small footprint pilot scale solutions, and as well we have those big industrial solutions in our portfolio. And this is something where we would like to have the discussion with you. You see our people. I think this is a May calendar sheet here with our REINARTZ stuff, and here it was in a bigger installation in Asia. We have already a nice amount of references and number of machinery outside. And as said, we would be glad and happy to get into contact. And at the end of the session, as Bernd already told us, we will have the time for questions and answers. Thank you very much.